He moved $63,000 out of our joint account over 7 months, and he was smiling at me across the breakfast table the entire time. I didn't know that yet, of course. On the morning it all started to unravel. I thought the worst thing happening in my life was that my husband had been distant lately. Cold in a way I couldn't quite name. The kind of cold that creeps in slowly. So slowly you keep telling yourself. It's the season, it's the stress, it's the job, it's nothing. You find reasons because the alternative is too frightening to sit with. We had been married for 9 years. We lived in a semi-detached house in Oakville, Ontario. The kind of neighborhood where people wave from driveways and argue politely about whose turn it is to shovel the shared path. We had built something real there. Or I thought we had. My husband. I'll call him my husband because that's what he was, even if he had already decided otherwise. Worked as a senior project manager for a construction firm based in Mississauga. I was a dental hygienist at a clinic in Burlington. Between the two of us, we were comfortable. Not wealthy, but stable. We had a TFSA, an RRSP, a joint checking account we both contributed to every month. We had plans, a trip to Portugal we had been saving for, a conversation about maybe adopting a dog. The dog never happened. Looking back, I can trace the shift to the previous autumn. October maybe. He started working later, which wasn't completely unusual. His projects had busy cycles. But it felt different. His phone began going everywhere with him, including the bathroom. When I asked who was calling, he'd say the site foreman, the client, the general contractor, always someone with a title and a reason. I believed him because I wanted to. Because we had been together since our early 30s, and I thought I knew who he was. I mentioned it to my best friend over coffee one afternoon in December. She works as a nurse at Joseph Brant Hospital, and she has the kind of bluntness that comes from years of dealing with people in crisis. She looked at me over her mug and said quietly, "You already know. You're just not ready to say it out loud." I told her she was wrong. She wasn't. The night everything changed was a Tuesday in March. I had made butter chicken, his favorite, something I'd been making since we were dating. I even bought naan from the bakery up the street instead of the grocery store kind. I don't know why I did that. Maybe some part of me was already trying to hold on to something. We sat down to eat. He barely touched his plate. He was looking at the table, not at me. I asked him if everything was all right. He said, "We need to talk." I set down my fork. "I don't think this is working anymore," he said. His voice was completely even. No tremor. No hesitation. Like he had rehearsed it. Like he had been rehearsing it for months. I asked what he meant. "The marriage," he said. "I'm not happy. I haven't been for a while." The kitchen felt very small suddenly. The overhead light seemed too bright. I said, "Why didn't you tell me? We could have gone to counseling. We talked about counseling last year." He shook his head. "It's not something counseling is going to fix." "How do you know that if we haven't tried?" He didn't answer. I sat there with butter chicken going cold on the plate between us, trying to understand how a Tuesday in March had become the worst night of my life. "Is there someone else?" I asked. He paused. Just long enough. "No," he said. That pause told me everything the word didn't. We talked. If you can call it talking, for almost 2 hours. He was calm the entire time. Measured. He said the marriage had run its course. He said people change. He said he was sorry, but not in the way that means anything. He said I could stay in the house for now while we figured out the details. I went upstairs and sat on the edge of the bed we had shared for 9 years, and I did not cry. I was too shocked to cry. I kept thinking about Portugal, about the dog we never got, about the naan from the good bakery. The next morning, he had already left for work when I came downstairs. There was a coffee made in the pot, which somehow made it worse. Like nothing had changed and everything had. I called my sister. She's 2 years younger than me, and she lives up in Barrie with her partner and her 2 kids. She answered on the second ring, and by the time I said, "Something happened," she was already saying she was coming. While I waited, I did something I still can't fully explain. I opened my laptop and logged into our joint bank account. I'm not sure what I was looking for. Clarity, maybe. Evidence that life was still orderly somewhere. What I found instead was 9 months of withdrawals I didn't recognize. Not huge amounts all at once. Smart amounts. 200 here, 400 there, a few larger ones buried between grocery runs and utility payments. If you weren't looking carefully, you might miss them entirely. But I was looking carefully now, and once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Over 9 months, he had moved $63,000 out of our joint account into something I had no access to. My hands went cold. I am not a forensic accountant. I am a dental hygienist from Burlington. But I understood enough to know that what I was looking at was not an accident. This was not a man who had fallen out of love and decided to be honest. This was a man who had been preparing his exit for the better part of a year while I made butter chicken and bought naan from the good bakery. I closed the laptop. I sat very still for a moment, and then something shifted inside me. The shock didn't disappear, but something else moved in alongside it. Something quieter and harder. I was not going to cry. Not yet. First, I was going to be smart. My sister arrived around noon. I showed her the account. She stared at the screen for a long time without saying anything, which is unusual for her. Then she said, "You need a lawyer today." She was right. I called a family law firm in Burlington that afternoon. I had seen their name on a billboard on Brant Street 100 times and never thought I would ever need them. The receptionist was kind. She said they could see me the following morning. That night, my husband came home from work and acted as though the previous evening had been a minor disagreement. He asked what was for dinner. I said I hadn't cooked. He heated something up for himself and went to the living room and turned on the television. And I sat at the kitchen table and wrote down every transaction I had found, with dates, amounts, and whatever description the bank had listed. I photographed every page. I didn't sleep much that night, but I wasn't panicking anymore. I was paying attention. The lawyer's name was, well, it doesn't matter. What matters is that she had been doing family law in Halton Region for over 20 years, and she had the kind of calm authority that made me feel, for the first time in 48 hours, like I wasn't completely alone in this. I showed her the bank records. I explained the timeline. I told her about the conversation at the dinner table and the pause before "no" when I asked if there was someone else. She listened. She took notes. She didn't rush me. Then she said, "In Ontario, assets accumulated during a marriage are subject to equalization. It doesn't matter whose name is on the account. What he moved out of that account is still a matrimonial asset, and concealing it has consequences." I asked what that meant in practical terms. "It means," she said, "that what he was trying to do isn't going to work the way he planned." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in 2 days. She advised me to open a personal bank account that same day at a different institution and redirect my paychecks immediately. She told me to make a detailed list of all shared assets: the house, the vehicles, the investment accounts, the RRSPs. She told me to photograph anything in the house that had sentimental or financial value. She told me to keep every communication with him in writing from this point forward. I did everything, she said. I also, on her suggestion, consulted a financial advisor she referred me to who specialized in divorce asset tracing. He found things I hadn't. Transfers to a personal account that had been opened 3 months before the dinner table conversation. Payments to what appeared to be a shared streaming service subscriptions, except we didn't subscribe to that service. He traced it to an account linked to a woman who worked at his firm's Calgary office. So it wasn't someone with no face and no name. It was someone specific. Someone he had likely met at a work conference the previous spring, which I remembered him mentioning, because I had helped him pack for it. I don't think I have words for how that particular detail landed. I had helped him pack for the trip where he met her. I had driven him to Pearson. I had texted him to ask if he'd landed safely. He had texted back a heart emoji. For a while, that detail was the hardest part. But I made myself keep moving forward. I had a lawyer. I had a financial advisor. I had documentation. I had a sister who called every morning and asked what I needed. And slowly, over the weeks that followed, I began to understand something important. He had been planning this for a long time, but so had I, without realizing it. Every year I had worked, every contribution I had made to our accounts, every mortgage payment, every weekend spent painting the spare room or laying down interlocking stone in the backyard. All of that was documented, traceable, and legally mine to claim. He had not thought about that. About 6 weeks after that Tuesday in March, I came home from my shift to find him sitting at the kitchen table with a piece of paper in front of him. He slid it across to me without saying much. It was a separation agreement his lawyer had drafted. He seemed confident about it. Comfortable, even. I read it. I brought it to my lawyer. She looked at it for approximately 45 seconds before she said, "This is a first offer. Don't even consider it." He had proposed retaining the house, splitting the registered accounts 50-50, but calculating them only from the date of the bank transfer he thought I didn't know about, and a spousal support arrangement that was significantly below the provincial guidelines. He had also conveniently omitted the $63,000 from the asset disclosure entirely. My lawyer drafted a response. I won't pretend the months that followed were easy. They weren't. There were days I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot after work and could not make myself go inside my own house. There were nights I called my sister at 11 o'clock from the bathroom floor because something small, a receipt, a song on the radio, the smell of the butter chicken spices in the cabinet, had undone me completely. There were weeks when I lost weight I couldn't afford to lose because eating felt like too much effort. But there were other things too. I started going for walks along the lakefront in the evenings. Long ones, the kind where you lose track of time. I started reading again, which I hadn't done properly in years. I started having dinner with friends I'd quietly drifted from during the marriage, and I remembered why I had loved them in the first place. My sister drove down from Barrie twice a month, and we would sit at my kitchen table until midnight, talking about everything and nothing. I was not okay, but I was building toward okay. The financial discovery process took 4 months. His lawyer pushed back on almost everything. There was a point where his team tried to argue that the $63,000 in transfers was related to legitimate business expenses, which my financial advisor dismantled point by point because none of the transactions aligned with his firm's billing cycles or client accounts. In Ontario, when a spouse deliberately conceals or dissipates assets before separation, the court can make what's called an unequal division of net family property. My lawyer filed for this. His lawyer became notably less confident. The woman from Calgary, I never asked her name, and I still don't know it, apparently ended the relationship sometime around the point at which the legal process began in earnest. I learned this indirectly through a mutual friend who had heard it from someone at his firm. I didn't feel any particular satisfaction about that. Maybe I expected to. But by the time I heard it, I had stopped measuring my recovery against what was happening to him. The settlement came in November. I won't share the exact numbers. My lawyer advised me not to. And honestly, I don't think the numbers are the point. What I will say is that the house was sold, and my portion of the proceeds plus the equalized assets gave me enough to put a down payment on a small townhouse in Burlington. 2 bedrooms, a back garden that needs work, a kitchen with good light in the morning. I moved in on a Saturday in December, 2 weeks before Christmas. My sister and her partner drove down with her kids to help. We ordered pizza and sat on the floor among the boxes, and her youngest fell asleep wrapped in a moving blanket in the corner, and I looked around at all of it. The half-unpacked kitchen, the bare walls, the cold December light coming through the window, and felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Relief. Not happiness, not yet. But the particular relief of no longer waiting for something bad to happen. Because it had happened, and I was still here. I had a therapist by then, a woman who worked out of an office on Plains Road in Burlington. I started seeing her in April, about a month after the dinner table. She said something to me around month 3 that I have thought about many times since. She said, "You keep describing this as something that was done to you." And it was. But you're also the person who found the account records, who called the lawyer the next day, who documented everything. Those weren't accidents. That was you, under pressure, making clear-headed decisions. I hadn't thought of it that way. I had been so focused on what he had done, the planning, the transfers, the calm lie at the dinner table, the pause before no, that I had not given myself credit for what I had done in response. I had not fallen apart. Or rather, I had fallen apart and I had also, simultaneously, held it together. I had done both at once, which is apparently what you do when you have no other choice. There is one more thing I want to say. About 3 months after I moved into the townhouse, I ran into him at a grocery store in Burlington. It was a Sunday afternoon. He was in the produce section. He looked the same, mostly, except tired in a way I didn't recognize. He saw me and stopped, and for a moment neither of us moved. Then he said, "You look well," I said. "I am." I put a bag of apples in my cart and walked to the next aisle. I have replayed that moment more times than I probably should. Not because of him. Because of how I felt in it. I was not angry. I was not devastated. I was not performing confidence I didn't have. I was just a woman in a grocery store on a Sunday who had somewhere to be. He had spent 9 months carefully planning a future that didn't include me. He had moved money and filed papers and smiled across breakfast tables and told a woman in Calgary that his marriage was already over. He had been so certain that he would walk away cleanly with the house and the money and the uninterrupted life he had designed. What he didn't plan for was me. He didn't plan for the fact that I would open that bank account and recognize what I was seeing. He didn't plan for the lawyer on Brant Street or the financial advisor who traced every transfer. He didn't plan for a woman who had spent 9 years being reasonable, deciding, very quietly, that she was done being taken advantage of. He thought he was leaving. He had no idea I was already 1 step ahead. And the townhouse I live in now, with the back garden that needs work, and the kitchen with good light in the morning. I paid for it with half of everything he thought he had hidden. He didn't take everything from me. He thought he did. He was wrong.